I was raised Catholic. I'm the oldest of 6 kids, and I was from a faithful family. But in my teens, I experienced, what many people would, relate to probably tumultuous teenager years, and in some ways difficult and strained family relationships. And I basically, I didn't lose faith in God altogether, but I lost my desire to live a life of faith. And I essentially began to live as though God didn't exist. And I kind of assumed that if God's so good and so loving, that He would just forgive all that. And it didn't really matter whether I was in a relationship with Him or not. And for a while, I mean, that was okay. I, matched with my peers and where they were at, and that was fine for me for a period. But eventually, in my early 20s, I began to realize that I was not experiencing the fulfillment that I desired in life. I was going after all kinds of, fleeting pleasures, and I found myself often with a question like, is this really all there is? Is this it? I would say there was a deep existential yearning in my heart to really understand who I was, what my purpose was, and what I was made for. But I didn't know how to articulate that. At one point, when I was 24, a couple of my friends invited me to a Catholic event, and I said no. Then they said that, there's going to be lots of girls there. And I said, okay, let's do that. And so they brought me to this youth event modeled after World Youth Day, where in addition to the social aspects, which were great, they really poked at questions in my heart. They poked at questions about what life was really all about, and what are the things motivating us and leading us and guiding us in our life. And I realized I didn't have answers to a lot of those questions, and it was kind of just, it was almost like those questions were being painfully reopened before me. At one point of the youth rally, there was this moment where we were outside and someone was leading us in a time of sung prayer. And there was this young lady who was, she was leading us in song, and she basically just had her eyes closed. She was singing beautifully. She had her hand up in the air, and she had this huge smile on her face, as though there was nobody else there. It was just her and the one she loved, God, and she was singing to His ears. And I was really transfixed by the sight of this. I was just, to be honest, I was kind of amazed by it. And the deep feeling I had was, she has something that I don't have, and I want that. And as I acknowledged my yearning for that, it's so, hard to describe, but essentially, I felt in that moment, God respond to that desire. And it was almost like a rush of wind, like an overpowering experience. I kind of have goosebumps whenever I talk about it, just remembering that total awareness that God was there, that God heard me, and that God loved me. And, in some ways I realized my image of God as I had when I was younger was not perfect. The sort of image of a harsh, kind of distant father who was often mad at me. It wasn't really who God was. It was a powerful moment, and I often relate it to the story of the prodigal son, whereby the son who's been away and living a life of debauchery is coming home, and is just formulating the words to beg his father for the place of a slave in his father's house. And before he can even articulate that, his father, who's waiting for him, goes running to embrace him. And I felt that moment. I felt like God had awaited my return. The effect of this moment really was my life pivoted. It completely changed my life. And I, after that, did not want to live the same way. Felt that my life had been in many ways selfish, and I wanted to be more for others. And I really wanted to just embrace God and His plan for my life. So I went to confession right afterwards. It was the ability to go to that, which was amazing. And I wrote down a promise to God that I wouldn't forget that experience. And I never did. It changed my life. And my life afterwards was very different. I found myself making new friends through volunteering with the poor in the city of Toronto. I found myself praying a lot more and believing that God heard my prayer. And I found myself just discerning new things for my life that were completely not on my radar before. In a way, I felt like I had been given a new life. The reality is God offers this to each of us. And whether you have an experience like that, which just blows your mind, or whether you just have an acknowledgement of your own desire to know God and to know His plan for your life and to know who you are in His sight, the reality is that's there for all of us. And if you'd like to receive that, Well, I just invite you to pray for that. You can take a moment right now and just ask God to come into your heart, and you can take a moment before you go to bed or in the first thing in the morning to continually ask God to come into your heart and show you what He has planned for you in your life. God desires a relationship with each and every one of us, and each and every one of us is created with purpose and meaning. God loves you and wants to be in a relationship with you. Do you want that? Oh yeah, and P.S. That woman who was leading us in song, who was so instrumental in my conversion experience, we got to become friends after that weekend and got to know each other better and better over time, and eventually I was able to convince her to marry me. So that's my wife, Lisa.